Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Taking the Lead. This is our video podcast where we get to speak to great PR and communications leaders, but we don't talk much about PR and communications. We talk instead about leadership, which is so important, and I think even more important today. So let me introduce to you today's guest. Many of you know him. It's Andy Polanski. He's the chairman and CEO at IPG DXTRA. Andy, you can correct me if I didn't say it correctly. They are a global collective of 27 marketing services and agency brands and more than 7,000 employees. He's also the executive chairman of Weber Shandwick. Previously, and many of you know him as the CEO of Weber Shandwick, he graduated from TCNJ, the College of New Jersey. He's a director on one of their foundations. He's on the board of directors of the Advertising Council. It's good. They're listening to the PR guy. I like that. He's on the board of trustees of VNA Health Group, one of the nation's largest nonprofit independent providers of home health, hospice, and community-based care. Welcome to Taking the Lead, Andy Polanski.
Well, Ken, it's a pleasure to be here and see you again and spend a little bit of time with you.
Great to have you here. Okay, we're going to dig right in. So anyone who knows you knows that you're passionate about client service, culture, and collaboration, the three C's for you. How do you do this with, as we said, 7,000 employees worldwide, and I assume nearly all of them are virtual or partly virtual, for a year during a global pandemic?
Well, it certainly has been a challenge, right, for all of us in every conceivable way. Uh, and I think it's so important to just stay connected and make sure, I've just been so impressed with the resilience of our teams, how people have naturally supported clients, but supported each other too. We're kind of all going through this very challenging time together in this global health crisis. And you keep that spirit alive by making sure you do the outreach very frequently. We are, most of our teams, to your point, are working remotely in offices around the world. But I genuinely feel like people are more connected than ever. And it's really important if you consider the kind of model we have. You mentioned it's IPG DXTRA.
Okay.
It's a collective of 27 marketing services agencies, public relations firms, experiential and sports marketing firms, branding firms, healthcare, digital. It's a really interesting combination of firms, and you get richness in thinking when you look at how you might build integrated teams to support clients on their challenges. So you have to make sure everybody is connected and keep that collaborative spirit alive. And again, I've just been super impressed. It comes down to people and making that happen, and it's been inspiring to see it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. For me, so much of this experience is about how you choose to view things. And we'll circle back to this at the end of the interview. But I think if you look for opportunity and look for good in any situation, you can find it. And I think a lot of people are via technology, maybe even feeling more connected. So that's great. So next question. In your current position and the position you were in before and for many years, you weren't just leading companies and teams, you were leading leaders. You were leading stars in their own right. So what's your special sauce? What's your strategy to lead leaders?
Well, I think what's interesting in terms of my career is I've had so many different roles and positions within the agency environment. So I do think I have a real appreciation for the lens that everyone looks through and the experiences they have. And my role now is quite different, right? I think as your career is advancing, you have more and more people reporting to you. You have oversight over a particular business. For me now, it's really, I think of it more as a servant leader. How do I support the teams? How do I provide advice, inspiration? How do I help foster leadership in them, right? And how they look in terms of bringing interesting approaches to their businesses. So, that's how I've always kind of thought about my role. It's even more, I think, the case now. Just I have amazing leaders across these agencies, some of whom I've been partnering with for many years. To your point, stars in the industry for sure. So it's more just how do you provide the guidance, the counsel, the advisory, hopefully a little bit of wisdom predicated on all the experience I've had. And again, fortunately, we do have a really collegial, collaborative team, and we work very closely together. And I think as a result, we have high performing agencies, and people really relish the roles they're in.
I love that you mentioned servant leadership. I happen to believe it is the most effective choice or approach a leader can make. And I always tell people, you can look at it as at the pyramid and you're on top if you want, but instead I say invert it, make the inverted pyramid. You're now on the bottom, and everyone you're supporting is over
Yeah.
you. You're supporting them, and you're charged with driving their success. And for me, that the stakes are higher, and it's much more fulfilling to know that you've supported the leaders in your organization, maybe the leaders in training. I mean, talk about that. That's where you create this leadership legacy. I've always said, in the PR cemetery, there's no tombstone that says, "Hey, they doubled their budget last year." It's not.
Right.
It's not about that. It's about the leaders and others who look back, on working for you and with you collaboratively, and can think back and say, here's something I learned from Andy Polanski. So
Well, and look, the vibrancy comes from the diversity of thought, right? And we're in this business because we are intellectually curious bunch. Kind of feed off each other, and so just having that diversity, both in terms of representation and just in thinking, I think is so important in the secret to success.
third question. We're hoping for the great return. We're not sure what it'll look like. We don't quite know if it will be this summer, this fall. Who knows? But whenever and whatever that is, how are you preparing the leaders under you and your teams to come back to this changed environment?
Yeah. Well, it's certainly a lot to wrap your head around, right? Because I think in some respects, as hard as it was, just the notion of everyone leaving the office and going to work remotely and all the issues surrounding that, in some respects, the coming back to the office might even be more challenging for all kinds of reasons, and we could touch on a few of them. But of course, paramount is the safety and well-being of our folks, and so we start with that. We listen to how people are feeling and thinking about these types of issues, and I think one of the things we've learned through this period is how important balance is, and people have we want them to bring their whole selves to work, and there's a lot going on in all of our lives, right, and juggling, and so you want to get a perspective on how to phase that in. I think we'll permanently go to some sort of hybridized approach where some of our folks will still work remotely at least some of the time.
Mhm.
I think that's true across most of our agencies all around the world. I think flexibility is the key, right? And just to not make any quick decisions, really understand, obviously what's happening in the public health environment, but just listen to our people, and what's going to make the best possible situation for them as we plan all this over the next months.
That raises there's so many leadership skills or attributes, whatever you want to call them, but some have risen to the surface, some are more important now. And I think for the great return, and one is listening and the other is empathy, really trying to understand what your employees are going through, because some of us have been fine with the lockdown or fine with working from home. Some of us are fine with coming back to the office. Some want it desperately, but others don't. And really trying to understand what those employees are going through so you can give them the leadership they require, I
Yeah.
think really has risen to the top and will continue to be a big factor in effective leadership.
Yeah, and I do think there's magic in bringing people together in a physical sense, right? We're in a creative business, and people feed off of each other's ideas.
Yeah.
So I am one that feels like part of the equation will be to bring people back in collaborative environments, offices, so on and so forth. But again, a more flexible way of thinking about it, I think, would be healthy for everybody.
Good point. Last question. So, as you know, and our viewers know, I believe if you look for good, you will see it. I believe if you look for opportunity, you'll see it, even in a pandemic situation. Despite the enormous loss of life, I think those who have looked for it have found good, have pivoted, have had, created opportunities for themselves. So, what good or what opportunity do you see coming out of this crazy year of, starting in March, I want to say March 13th, 2020, at least in the US side?
Yeah. Well, look, I would hope that people have a certain appreciation for balance. And so many of us, of course, had the wonderful opportunity to spend more time with families, and that was certainly true in my case. To my grown kids and their fiancés and their puppies living with us through the pandemic, which was a really special time. And you think about that and just how important it is to be present, whether you're in at home or with colleagues. Just to your point, I just have a real appreciation for how people are feeling and empathize. Everybody's in a different situation, faces challenges in their lives, and I think that's come into clearer focus, which I hope is a positive byproduct of having gone through this time. A couple other things that I would say, perhaps more in a business-oriented context. I do think it certainly has sped up digital transformation, and I think that will provide a lot of opportunities for people in our industry, and will be good for business, for those who adapt and look around corners and continue to evolve their offering. And I think the third thing I would say is it just has reaffirmed how important the kind of counsel we provide is in the C-suite and to boards. If you consider all the issues surrounding the pandemic and how that relates to all the different stakeholders that an enterprise is always needs to be thinking about. It's the guidance, it's the advice that public relations counselors in particular, they're at the table, right? They're now leading strategy around all these issues, and I think again, that's a nice boost for business perhaps, but I think it's important because I think when you put the kind of teams together that we could put together, the ideas are better, the solutions are better, the context is considered, and we help get things to a better place.
Yeah, well, the whole notion of being accepted by the C-suite, be valued by the C-suite. I mean, that was talked about when I was in the business many years ago. If we're seeing more of that, I mean, I think we've seen more of that over the years, but if we're seeing more of that because of the last year that we've had, then that is one of the really good things to come out
Yeah.
of it. And I agree.
Yeah, I think there's no question
Yeah.
that we are seeing more of that, and I don't think it's a moment in time. I think there's been a sea change in thinking around this, and I think that it'll be. I think that the kind of, if you think about public relations professionals, it'll be much more central, I think, to corporate strategy as we go forward.
Let's hope. What a great way to end this. I'm also going to end it by saying I read a letter to Andy that I had sent him 1993. And in my closing, I said, let's stay in better touch. So we're telling all our viewers, the two of us are going to stay in better touch now, all these years later. But thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate your taking the time and sharing your wisdom and insights with us.
It's my pleasure, and it is great to reconnect. So hopefully we'll keep that going, and all the best.
Thank you.